1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10. Okay, when she was first leaving the house, I think it was the brother-in-law. He tried to stop her. He was like, "What are you doing walking out by yourself?" But then she's all like, she started yelling like, "Pedophile, pedophile," and shit. And everybody is like gathered around because, like I said, in this story, in this version of Paris, there is no personal space. Which I guess can be a good thing in this case, because like the entire street comes and gathers around, and they all get involved. Like in real, you know how in real life people are afraid to get involved? In this story, there's no such thing. Everybody gets involved with everything. And I have no idea as to what French culture is like. Never been there, never been a Francophile. I have no French relatives. So I don't know what the fuck. But, yeah, anyways. So they all surround him and they start saying like, back, pedophile. And then he's like, no, I'm her like uncle's like brother-in-law. And they all just harass him. So he has to let her go, basically. And then, so he goes back to her uncle and tells him that happened. And then everybody's looking for her. And then finally this dude with a big ass mustache brings her back. And she's like, give me my blue jeans. And he's like, what are you talking about? This is my blue jeans. And then she's like, you know, he sits down and then he starts looking at the uncle and he's like, you're a homosexual. And then he's like, no, I'm not. He's like, that's illegal. And then the uncle's like, no, I'm an artist. I perform in nightclubs. And then he's like, well, that's gay shit. I'm going to take you to jail. And then the little girl is like, she's like, he's a cop. And then she starts saying, beat his ass and throw him out. And then the uncle's like, but he's a cop. And like, now he knows, like, even if I did try to beat his ass, he knows now because, like, you said that. So I lost the element of surprise. And she's like, oh, fuck it, just beat his ass. He's like, you're going to beat a cop's ass? And she's like, he's not really a cop. He's a pedophile. And then it just goes back and forth like this. And then eventually the uncle does throw him out. And then in the meantime, while they were arguing, Zazie, the little girl, I mean, I guess she's not that little if she already got her period, but, you know, whatever. But anyway, she took the blue jeans. They said that it fits her, like, perfect, which I don't know how the fuck that's possible, because she didn't try it on. That's, like, the whole thing when they bought it at the market. You know, it's like some fucking street market. She's like, can I try it on? And they're like, no, this ain't no department store. And then, but when she puts them on, somehow the shit fits perfectly. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe she just wanted it to fit her so bad. It actually fits fucking horrible. It's, like, squeezing her vaginal lips, and it's way too short, and it's, like, crooked on one side. But she's like, oh, no, it fits perfectly because she wants it to. You never fucking know when it comes to this story. You never fucking know. I want to open it to another random... That other page was good to demonstrate the Uncle Gabriel's ramblings, but it didn't show, like, the chaos of what I'm trying to explain. Like, oh, and also on the first page, what did it say? It says that because he's complaining that people stink, and that his solution to that is to put on hella perfume, and everyone always comments on it. And then he says only, where the fuck is the first chapter? It says in the paper that not 11% of the flats in Paris have bathrooms. So, you know, this is at some point in the past. Okay, where's a good thing that, Oh, yeah, and it's funny because sometimes when people sit down next to each other, it says, like, Gabriel installed himself next to Zazie. Like, it says installed like that, you know? Let me see, where's a good spot? I know I wouldn't be able to find a good fucking spot. An appreciable traffic jam happening to present itself, Gabriel, followed by Zazie, calmly got out of the coach, making little conspiratorial signs to the disconcerted travelers as they did so, a hypocritical maneuver, which is spelled all crazily, which was intended to fool them. As it turned out, the travelers were carried away before they had a chance to take any adequate action. As for Fyodor Balanovich, the comings and goings of Gabriella left him completely cold, and all he was bothering about was leading his lambs to the required locality before the hour when museum attendants go for their libations, such a lacuna in their programma not being rectifiable for the next day. The travelers were leaving for Gibraltar, city of ancient parapets. Such was their itinerary. Okay, so, I don't know, man. I don't know if you're getting a vibe for the craziness of this shit, but, Yeah, it's funny. And it's funny because, like, Zazie just keeps asking Gabriel over and over, like, after this whole thing about this dude coming in who they can't decide if he's a cop or a pedophile disguised as a cop. Like, and there's even one part where she's like, I think he's a cop disguised as a pedophile disguised as a cop. And anyways, after that, she will not fucking stop asking Gabriel, like, what is he a homosexual? And he's like, no. And she's like, are you a homosexual? And he's like, no. And she just keeps going and going and going, and she's like, explain it to me. And it's like, bitch, what do you want him to say? Like, she is so fucking crazy. And anyways, so she steals the little blue jeans and she puts them on, and then, like, the dude keeps saying, like, and, you know, because when they were at the market, like, he said he was buying them for her, but then he just kept it for himself. It was like a joke. And then she keeps saying, like, that's supposed to be for me, but of course nobody's gonna believe her little ass. He's like, no, I bought them for me, even though I'm sure if they unwrapped them, they'd be like, well, why do you have jeans for an 11-year-old? You know, like, that doesn't fit you, you know. But he might be saying, like, well, it's for my daughter or some shit like that. No, nobody ever gives any explanations. So anyway, she steals the shit, she puts it on in the other room, and then while the wife and her, like, listening to the two dudes argue through the door, she's like, I'm gonna walk out there and show them that I took the jeans. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, she's just so, like, she's so ridiculous and, like, in your face. And then, anyways, so that's the day. And then, I kind of forgot what happens, but basically the part I was just reading was, like, oh, because Gabriel takes her to the Eiffel Tower. His brother-in-law who drives a taxi, and Zazie, they all go to the Eiffel Tower, and they're, like, looking around. And then they come down from the Eiffel Tower, and then Gabriel kind of has this, like, philosophical moment where he's like, you know what, I don't like Zazie being up there because she could fall and die at any second, and you know what, anybody could die at any second, and I don't even know if anybody who I know is okay right now except for me, because I only know that I'm alive. Everybody else I know, they could be dead, like, while I'm out here for the day, and I wouldn't know, you know, so that's kind of deep. And then, but Zazie comes back down, and Charles goes home, because he was, like, tripping, he's like, oh, I don't like these heights, and then he's like, I don't want to have to hear about periods and shit, so he goes home, and then that's when that part I was just reading happens, because there's, like, a tour bus full of tourists from other parts of Europe. And for some reason, they all gather around Gabriel, and they all start becoming obsessed with him, because it says that, like, they love French people or some shit. And then they all, like, he starts going off and off that long monologue that I was reading earlier. He starts just, like, waxing poetic and shit, and they're all like, ooh, ah. And then Fyodor Blankovich, or whatever his name is, comes over. He's, like, the tour bus driver. And the funny thing is, like I said, everybody's rude. There's no rules. There's no rules in this world. He just comes up and he's like, hey, all you fucking assholes and clot faces and bitches and whores, come back in the fucking tour bus, you animals. And they're all just like, ooh, real French guy. We want to listen to him instead. And Fyodor's like, come on. And nobody's listening to his ass. And then they're like, come on, French guy. And they grab Gabriel and Zazie and pull them on the bus. And he's just waxing poetic, like, hella much. And then she's like, are you gay? Are you gay? Are you gay? And everyone's like, who's gay? And they're like, I know gay. Who's gay? What's gay? And everybody in the bus starts getting on with it. And then there's this random ass lady who, like I said, they call her bourgeois at first. So I imagine her to be wearing, like, a fur coat or something fabulous. And they say she's like an old widow. And from that point on, they'd call her the widow, whatever her name was, Moret or something like that. And then, basically, I mean, there's nothing basically in this story. It's just a bunch of chaos. Like, everybody starts getting into this conversation, and it's just, like, this big back and forth of, like, you're a little bitch. Who's a little bitch? No, you shouldn't say that. Oh, I shouldn't say that? I should sock you in the face. Who should be socked in the face? Oh, her, right next to me. Hey, that's not very nice to say. Well, excuse your manners, madam. Thank you for calling me madam. Like, it's literally like that. It's just so fucking, like I said, it's like a play. And then they are trying to get to this one church. They get there, I guess, right as it's closing or something. But then, I really didn't understand this part, but, like, somehow Gabriel gets taken away by all the tourists, and, like, almost like crowd surfing. I mean, it's not, but that's kind of how it's explained. And then somehow Zazie gets left behind with the widow, and then the widow is like, they're napping our guide, you know, they're guide napping. And then this random cop comes up. And he's like, who's guide napping? And she's like, after them. And then he's like, I'll get us a taxi. And he walks out in the street, and all these cars like honking, like curse him out and like go around him. But then this one taxi finally pulls over, and they all get in. And then the widow starts getting hot for him, like out of nowhere. She's just like, my man. She starts getting super horny. And then fucking they make their way to the church, and they meet up with everybody else, and the taxi crashes into the back of the bus. And because it's complete chaos in a world with no rules, they just fucking like start, you know, arguing about it. But there's no fucking protocol for this shit, I guess. And the cop is like, I'll deal with this, I'm a cop, but later, because I gotta go follow this sweet piece of ass. And then the bus driver is like, no, because you were in the taxi, so you're gonna take the taxi side, you know, and stuff. And then it fucking like cuts forward, and then Gabriel starts telling everybody, like, I'm a drag queen, come look at my come watch me be a ballerina, you know, in this nightclub called the Mount of Venus. And then he's like, I'll pay for everybody to get in, which seems kind of crazy, because I mean, unless they're gonna tip him fat tips, like, he's losing major money on this shit, because he's like, everything's on me, it's on the house. But I guess he takes this entire tour bus of people to come watch him do a show. And then he also calls his friends at home, like the you know, the bartender, and the bartender and the lady who works at the bar just got engaged, like, randomly. He's like, you want to marry me? She's like, what? He's like, will you marry me? And then she's like, well, I have to think about it for a second, right? He's like, well, okay, you can think about it. She's like, okay, I say yes. Like, it's so fucking random and weird. And then, anyway, Gabriel calls him on the phone, and he's like, hey, you fucking assholes, like, eat my dick and gargle my balls and come watch me, like, you fucking piece of shit. Like, tell my wife I'm performing. And then they go back and forth, like, with all these insults. And everybody comes out except for his wife, because for some reason she didn't want to come. She's like, I don't leave the house. I only stay here. And then everybody goes out and watches him perform. And then while he's out there, the fucking guy with the big-ass mustache, who it turns out is the same cop who the widow was hot with, and they were hanging out, and they were literally walking down the red light district, where Gabriel told Zazie not to walk because they're going to think she's a child prostitute. And then he's like, they're going to think you're one of those specialty child prostitutes that wears blue jeans, the blue jean child prostitute and stuff. And she's like, you're not being nice to me. And he's like, oh, my sucker blue. They're really going to think you're a prostitute if you do that. And then she starts walking around there anyway, and she sees the widow and the cop. I guess they just so happen to be walking. And then they realize they were walking next to each other. And then they're like, let's have sex. And then Zazie's right there. And then the cop is like, oh, let me go change. And then then Zazie and the widow start hanging out. And then they go to meet. They're like, Zazie's like, well, fuck you, bitch. And she's like, well, fuck you, little bitch. And then they start walking, but then they realize they're walking to the same location, which is the place where the drag show is going to be. And then they're like, haha, fancy seeing you here again, bitch. And then the widow's like, she's like, I'm trying to get some ass, like, leave me alone. And then Zazie's like, you ain't gonna get no ass with that cop. And then the widow's like, yes, I am. I'm thirsty as fuck. And like, he went to go change into his street clothes because he's not gonna fuck me with a cop uniform on. And then they see him, then he runs away. He doesn't come back. And then it turns out that that is the same guy who was the guy with the giant mustache from the beginning, who bought the blue jeans and all that shit. And he just walks up to Gabriel's apartment where his wife is sleeping in a chair, and he just fucking opens the door and walks in. He like picks the lock and walks in, and he's just like, oh, ever since I saw you this morning, I thought you were hot. I'm gonna rape you. And she's like, what the fuck? And she's like, well, she's like, what, wait, she doesn't even fight it. She's just like, oh, so you're gonna rape me, huh, asshole? Like, she just keeps insulting him. She's like, well, I can see somebody like you only has a brain the size of a pea, and like, oh, I don't know, all these little insults. And they're just going back and forth. But she doesn't like try to stop him. She doesn't grab a weapon or anything. She's just like, I can see you're so dumb. I can see you're so stupid. And he's just like, I'm gonna rape you. I'm gonna charm you because I don't like rape by force. But if you don't say yes, I'll just rape you by force. And he's like, but I don't want to do that yet, so let me put my charms on you. He's like, don't you love how I have all these disguises and I go around town tricking everybody and scamming everybody with all my disguises? And she's like, oh, only an idiot would think that was cool. And then he's like, all right, well, let me try this other charming technique. And then she's like, I bet you don't even know the meaning of the word charm. Look it up in the dictionary. Oh, because he's saying, like, clad. He's like, I clad myself in uniform. And then he's like, oh, clad. That doesn't even sound like a real word. And she's like, it is a real word. Look it up in the dictionary. And then he, like, grabs a dictionary and it's not in there. And she's like, well, I have a second dictionary. Look it up in there. And he does. And she's like, it's not in there. And then she's like, I have a third dictionary. He's looking it up in there. And then he's like, oh, it says clad. To put on clothes, and then unclad is to remove clothes. He's like, then unclad yourself. And he looks up and she escaped out the window, apparently. And we never see her again. We never see her ass again. She jumps out, she climbs down out the outside wall, and it says she jumps down the last, like, 10 feet or something. And we literally never hear about her ass again. And then fucking everybody, like, she says something about them staying up till 6 in the morning. And then at the drag show. And then afterwards, everybody's, like, at this restaurant, because they get kicked out of the drag, you know, they have to leave the drag place. They go to this restaurant, I guess. And everybody's, like, partying and shit. And it's, like, Gabriel, Zazie, all Gabriel's, like, regular friends, and then the widow. And then she's still waiting for the cop, who she doesn't know is a fucking rapist. Like, and she's like, oh, he never came back to fuck me. And then everyone's like, don't worry, there's plenty more fish in the sea, even for an ugly old bag like you. And she's like, oh, thank you, you know, and stuff. And then and then fucking the cop, and then some shit happened. And keep in mind, they brought the parrot to the show, so the parrot is in a cage in the middle of the table going, like, talk and stuff. And then some shit happens at the restaurant, which I don't even remember, but somehow people get in a fight. Oh, because this one guy is drunk. The one dude is drunk, and he gets up and starts dancing. And then it says, like, him and the old lady slap each other, and then the waiter comes by. 2 waiters come by and try to throw his drunk ass out. But then Gabriel's didn't like that, so he took the 2 waiters and, like, slammed their heads together. And then all the other waiters started coming and fighting them, and everybody started fighting, even Zazie and the old lady. They started throwing jugs of water and shit, and everybody's just getting in on this big-ass fight. And it's like it's like, you know, it's like a fucking food fight or something. Like, everything's just getting thrown, and then they're like, let's make our own coffee, and it burns them. And then one waiter gets up, and he's like, okay, cool, everything's cool, because the fight is over. And it's like, what would you like to eat tonight? And then earlier they tell, I don't know if this is the same restaurant or a different one, but they're telling, this is earlier. They go to this other restaurant with all the tourists and shit, and they say how the food is nasty, and it's, like, moldy, and it's from, like, days and days ago. And all the waiters are wearing loincloths for some reason. And then Zazie's like, your food is fucking disgusting, I don't want this shit. And then the manager comes out, and he's like, how dare you foreigners speak ill of my food? And, like, this food was crafted with love, with French love, and what do you know about it, you swine? And then Gabriel says something to him, like, shut your fucking mouth, bitch. And then he's like, oh, he dares to speak to me in our own dialect of French. And then, because he doesn't realize, like, they're not like, they're sitting with all the foreigners, but they're not foreigners themselves. I don't know, it's a fucking weird-ass story. And then, at the very, very end, after this big brawl with all the waiters and the customers, it says that these multiple police vans or some shit pull up outside, and then the fucking guy who was wearing all the disguises comes in, and he's like, haha, you didn't respect my disguises. And I don't know if it's real cops or if it's gangsters or what, but then the widow tries to run towards him, be like, oh, my love, I guess, or some shit. And then they fucking shoot her ass. They shoot her ass in front of everybody, and it says she's holding her guts as they're spilling out of her stomach, and that she dies on the floor like that. And then Gabriel's like, oh, they should be more respectful when there are children present. And Zazie passes out from seeing this traumatic shit. And then the owner of the restaurant is like, psh, psh, come over here and run into the service elevator. And everybody goes down there. And then they go into some underground tunnels, which I told my mom it must be left over from the war. And everyone starts going through these tunnels, and then eventually the tunnels lead to the metro. And then he's like, everybody has to split up. And then he's telling the guy, like, you better kill that bird. You better strangle it like in MASH. He's like, no, not my parrot. My parrot is my precious parrot who I'll do anything for. And then he's like, well, everybody split up. We all got to go separate ways. And he's like, Gabriel, don't drop off your, because he's like, oh, shit. Zazie has to go meet her mom at the train station, like, in, like, half an hour. Like, you know. And then he's like, Gabriel, don't drop off don't drop off your niece yourself because you're too fucking tall and everybody recognizes you. He's like, I'll go take her. So he takes her to where her mom is waiting, and then it has like this tiny little thing where her mom is saying how like she was fucking her boyfriend for like 2 days and how he's like a dumb little idiot and how he looked cute while he was sleeping because he looked like a baby even though he's like a soldier. And then she's like, well, I better go pick up my daughter. And she goes to the train station, picks up her daughter, and notices that it's a totally different guy dropping her off. And but she knows him. She's like, hi, Maurice. And then she's like, where's Gabriel? And he's just like, Gabriel could be better. We don't even know if Gabriel is still alive or not. We don't know fucking shit about what happened. And then Zazie goes on the train with her mom. She's like, how was the weekend? And then Zazie's just like, I've aged. And cut to black. That's the end. Oh, and 20 minutes too.